Hello and welcome to News Central Now. I am Adebola Adedugba. The top stories at this hour. House of Representatives alleges Borno suicide bombers were mercenaries. African Union observers say Mauritania presidential poll was peaceful. Anti-government demonstrations continue in Kenya. And details shortly. Let's begin by bringing you up to date on the suicide bombing in Goza, Borno State. The House of Representatives on Tuesday alleges that the female suicide bombers responsible for the killing of scores in Borno State on Saturday were imported. The lawmakers said this is in resolution after considering a motion of urgent national importance by Ahmed Jaha. And while condemning the attack, Jaha says the findings shows that bombers were recruited, brainwashed and imported from outside the state to carry out the suicide act in Goza. The attack had claimed over 30 lives. He further argued that bombings underscores the ongoing threat of terrorism in the country. The lawmaker informed the House that more than 180 people were critically injured and currently receiving treatment at various hospitals in the state. And to unpack this, I'm joined by a security expert, Salahuddin Hashim. Good evening. Glad to have you join me.
Thank you very much for having me, and good evening.
All right. Let me start by asking what's your thought on the position of the Speaker of the House of Representatives that suicide bombers were imported?
Yeah, unfortunately, again, I think it is very easy for lawmakers to quickly make conclusion over issues and incidences without waiting for some additional detail regarding what exactly transpired. It tells very clearly again that it is a failure of intelligence. And again, that is where the lawmakers contradict themselves and perhaps again put to question the capacity and the capability of the armed forces to gather intelligence. Intelligence gathering in situations like this is fundamental. And if there were recruitments happening and they were transported and they spent time even brainwashing them, and the intelligence could not pick anything near what was going to happen, and then of course couldn't even transmit this to the potential destination where the attack eventually occurred, and that they were actually seen to have mobilized, deployed, and then of course executed that particular attack. It's actually a complete question on the capacity of the entire intelligence community in this country as to whether or not they could pick intelligence.
Yes, Mr. Hashim, we'll get there. We'll get there. You talked about intelligence gathering. What does this say about our security architecture? Couldn't we have averted this attack?
Yeah, most definitely. I think the conversation around our security architecture is an ongoing one, telling us very clearly that we need to rejig and then, of course, recalibrate the existing security architecture. We cannot continue to have incidences and situations where citizens are not participants in the entire value chain of security decision-making. It is only when citizens have confidence in the state that they are able to help you gather intelligence, and then, of course, they could deploy that intelligence also for purposes of ensuring response from the side of the state. But where it becomes impossible, it therefore puts a question mark on the fact that there is a need to find what exactly is the missing link. And I can guarantee you that the most fundamental missing link is the inability to inspire citizens' ownership of their own security system, and then, of course, see them to take ownership. And this is so because of the long years of deprivation and perhaps some level of grievances that people have developed against the state.
Yes,
so again, what are the confidence building measures? I think these are some of the things that should be done.
Yes, apologies for butting in. Now, talking about concerns, there's been concerns, regarding IDP camps in Borno State, now known as super camps, as a breeding ground for this Boko Haram militants. How true or false is this?
I mean, that intelligence has been out there for a very long time. Considering the work that I have done and the interactions that I have also had with a number of people in different camps, I've heard threats, particularly from the women telling their other women or people that look, their men will soon attack. And then, of course, they have developed some level of sympathy for these guys. And unfortunately, the state has not also helped to de-radicalize them. And we have seen instances where these women have clearly demonstrated that what was happening was only temporal and just a transition, and that again there was going to be some level of resurgence. So again, it puts to question how very casual our state architecture has been in terms of profiling information and how they deploy them. These information are not new in various IDP camps. They are there. As a matter of fact, these women also have been able to find some elements to transmit information to some of the people who are still in the forest, perhaps to some of them to get safe passage, and to some of them for purposes of keeping them safe.
Now,
but I can guarantee you
yeah,
that the state has not the state has not completely gotten it right in terms of how to manage it.
Permit me to follow up on your line of thought. You talked about women, being at the forefront of these suicide bombings. Now, we understand from this recent attack, 4 female suicide bombers were involved, were apprehended, in this recent attack in Goza community. And also, we have reports that, in fact, 30 of them were released to the public for this activity. What do you think is the motive behind using women as suicide bombers compared to men?
Yeah, it is easy. Women are soft tissues, particularly within the security balance. The kind of SOP that is actually deployed to women is entirely different from men. And then, of course, the female gender is already implicated in terms of ensuring that they have become a weapon in the hands of terrorist organizations. And this is actually also, again, not entirely new. But again, it is about how the system itself has processed all of this information and again channeled dedicated and specific programming towards ensuring that particularly women, with the women gender, have some level of deliberate remodeling programming that allows for reintegration to happen. We have not seen any specific female gender reintegration approaches or methodology or even model that has been designed. What we have seen through the Operation Safe Corridor are mostly the combatants who are just there with a number of programming that is ongoing. But if you see most of the women, they are either allowed or left to development interventions to begin to do some psychosocial support arrangement for them, which I believe is not sufficient. Again, it is because the system has not appreciated to what extent these women have become terrible weapon in the hands of the terrorist organization. So it is very important to redesign their threat matrix. The threat matrix would again suggest very clearly that the female gender are becoming even more deadly as a weapon than men, considering that they are able to conceal the biology, their mode of dressing, and then of course their soft approaches also is an issue.
Mr. Hashim, apologies for butting in. In 30 seconds, I'd like you to answer. You talked about reintegration. Now, some school of thought say repentant Boko Haram members reintegrated into the society sort of act as accomplices to aid mayhem and also carry out successful bombings in the society. You may recall in 2016 where a certain group of or batch of repentant Boko Haram members, about 95 of them, were integrated into the society. They underwent various trainings, skill acquisition by various agencies of the government. And according to reports we have seen, out of the 95, 70 of them are from Goza community. So what's your take on reintegration of repentant Boko Haram members into the society? In 30 seconds.
When you do reintegration when you do reintegration without necessarily putting into account some risk matrix that help you to establish whether or not PTSD and then, of course, the post-traumatic stress disorder has been taken care of, then to be very honest, you have done almost nothing. And again, that for me is one programming area within the debriefing system that is still very lacking. And I hope the system can also pay attention to that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on the news. Salahuddin Hashim, security expert, many thanks for your insights.
Thank you very much for having me.
And still talking security matters, the security situation in Nigeria's north continues to deteriorate, with a surge in violent attacks and kidnappings leaving thousands of people displaced and killed. While the Nigerian government has promised to adopt a new action plan, there is still growing concerns about the security situation. Our correspondent, Ni Omoni, tells us more.
Northern Nigeria has been plagued by a worsening security situation in recent years. Attacks across Katsina, Sokoto and Zamfara state by terrorists locally known as bandits have spanned between 5 to 10 years, with the latest wave of kidnap and attacks in Nasarawa, Kaduna and Borno state. Between 2011 and 2023, over 8,000 people were killed, with over 2.5 million displaced, according to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. The insecurity has also severely impacted economic activity and development in the region. Despite these figures, the Nigerian government says it has disrupted and dismantled criminal networks in the country's northwest.
Our meetings over the past few months have shown our readiness for a paradigm shift in achieving peace in northern Nigeria. Each of you here is aware of the high-profile figureheads of these groups neutralized by our forces, and I am here to share with you that this is just the beginning.
Security experts argue that the situation will remain dangerous unless decisive action is taken.
You know, we have the criminality that we need to confront using force, using military might, or whatever, kind of ability that we can, deploy, to overcome that, to upturn that challenge. And then on the other side, also, we have some kind of underlying social, cultural, and economic factors that are fueling this crisis, and we need to also address them separately. So it is a kind of combined approach. So you cannot just deal with the symptoms, you have to deal with the entire disease.
The resolution from a recently held Northwest Peace and Security Summit is that a new action plan must be adopted and developed to end insecurity and poverty.
Left unsolved and unmanaged, violent conflict will continue to undermine the enormous potential that this country has to satisfy the needs of over 200 million people, including those who live in the Northwest.
But without giving an answer to this question, we cannot go anywhere. We will come back to another conference again. We're still talking about the same issue, the same problem.
As the situation continues to deteriorate, there are growing concerns over the long-term impact on the region and the country as a whole. The Nigerian government has been urged to take immediate action to address the root causes of the insecurity and provide adequate support to those affected. In Lagos for News Central, Ni Omoni.
The operatives of the Nigerian Immigration Service, Ilela Border Command, Sokoto, have arrested a 25-year-old Rukaya Hassan who attempted to traffic 2 underage girls across the border to the Niger Republic. The Command Public Relations Officer, Muhammad Abdullahi, said this in a statement on Tuesday in Abuja. Abdullahi said that the victims had been handed over to the National Agency for Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons for further investigations. You're watching News Central now. Let's take a short break. Stay with us. Thank you for staying tuned. The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, says the commission has no power constitutionally to conduct local government elections except in the Federal Capital Territory, FCT. Yakubu said this on the sidelines of a 2-day induction retreat for INEC resident electoral commissioners in Lagos. The retreat is to prepare recs ahead of the governorship elections in Edo and Ondo State in September and November, respectively. Reacting to the agitation, seeking powers back in INEC to be saddled with the responsibility of conducting local government elections, Yakubu described it as a constitutional matter. According to him, unless necessary amendments are made in the Constitution, INEC will only continue to organize national and state elections. And to unpack this, I am joined by a public affairs analyst, and that's Ismail Awal. Good evening. Glad to have you join me.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening.
All right. Let me start by asking what your impression is regarding the statement by the chairman of INEC, Professor Yakubu, not being able to undertake a local government election.
Well, actually, I am in full support of the call by Professor Yakubu, because just like he described it in that function, local government elections have over the time become a mere coronation by state governors. They appoint who they want to appoint, all in the name of election. And for us to really, as a nation, to start having a legitimate election in local government areas, it's a very serious need, and it's high time we have that constitutional amendment for INEC to be conducting the local government election, because it's an fact. Of course, INEC have their own shortcomings and mistakes, but I believe if that mandate will be transferred fully to the Independent National Electoral Commission, then some of the errors or that mere coronation will at least change to elections in some part of the country. Of course, the politicians will try to manipulate the process, but I think the call for the transfer of mandate to the INEC is coming even late.
You talked about the need for the Constitution to be amended to enable INEC undertake local government elections. Now, if that is done, I mean, what's the impact? What would that mean for other political parties within the state? What are the pros we're looking at in case such amendment is made to the Constitution?
Well, what we are looking at, if we are talking about the pros, for that it will be largely for the people or the electorate, or the state in general, because it means the governors and politicians are going to lose control of the total control they have of INEC, local government chairmen and ward councillors. And that means independent to the local governments and also to the people. It means the politicians and government are going to lose control. And when they lose control, it means largely they are going to also have, they are not also going to have controls of the funds that are sent directly into the local government's account. So it is a plus generally for people because, local governments are closer to the electorate than the state or federal government. So it means if the local governments got their freedom back, it means common men that are living inside communities, basic communities, are going to benefit surely from democracy better than they are benefiting nowadays.
Now, on the flip side, you've talked about the benefits of elections being handled by INEC as a body, in the local government levels. Now, on the flip side, what would that mean for the autonomy of a state? What are the disadvantages? Mr. Awal, are you there?
Sorry, I missed you. Say, what will that mean?
Yes,
for?
I mean, you highlighted the benefits.
I missed what you said.
Okay, just a recap for you so you can get the question right. You highlighted the advantages, the benefits of INEC taking charge of local government elections. Now, on the flip side, we understand the state is supposed to be autonomous. Yeah, so on the flip side now, what would that mean for the autonomy of the state? Disadvantages of them, not being the one to undertake or conduct local government elections.
Okay, I got that. Actually, what it means, actually, there's more of advantage than disadvantage to even the state government or the state government, because Now they are going to take off the responsibility of organizing local government election, which is very, very expensive. And it means they can move that money to other developmental projects. The only thing that they might miss is which will even make the democracy and politics stronger is the control they have. I think if they take away their side from that, that's all. I don't think there's anything to lose aside from the funds and control they are illegitimately grabbing from the local governments. It is, but I actually didn't say I'm losing anything. Of course, when it's election time, it means each and every local government chairman will have a total power to either support a sitting governor or not. Maybe that might be disastrous to them politically, but aside of that, I didn't see any disadvantage for state governors.
Well, I know yes, I know we're talking about local government elections, but then what would be your recommendation to INEC? We have governorship elections coming up in Edo State and Ondo State, in September and November respectively. So what's your advice to INEC as they prepare for these upcoming elections?
Well, actually, INEC is a very, very experienced institution. Of course, they have their shortcomings, but I will advise that they should try and be neutral as they are on many instances, and they should not side with any politician. I would also advise that just like the way they did in so many states, they should try and be very, very professional. The moment they become professional, everything will be set in place.
All right, thank you so much for your expertise on the news. Public Affairs Analyst Ismail Awal, many thanks for your insights.
Thank you for having me.
And now to health matters. Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Jide Idris, has said a total of 2,102 suspected cases of cholera and 63 deaths have been recorded across 33 states and 122 local government areas since the beginning of the year as of June 30th, 2024. Idris said this on Tuesday at a press briefing in Abuja. He notes the case fatality rate is at 3.0%. He said 7 of the top 10 states, Lagos, Bayelsa, Abia, Zamfara, Bauchi, Katsina, Cross River, Ebonyi, Rivers, and Delta contribute about 90% of the cases as southern states. The Guild of Medical Doctors has warned that the country's healthcare sector is facing a multitude of crises, stating the system was on the verge of collapse if urgent action is not taken. The medical directors in the private practice also posited that the government has no business in running of hospitals, whether tertiary or secondary, insisting they should let people who are adequately knowledgeable to do this. And briefing journalists on the state of healthcare at the end of its annual general meeting in Lagos, the national president of the Guild, Dr. Kuti Raymond, explains that the challenges plaguing the healthcare system are numerous and interconnected, pushing about 8 hospitals to close down in Maiduguri. Earlier, Chairman Chidion Medical Center Wiri, Professor Dr. Philip Njemanzi was on the news to talk about this.
I think the system needs to be helped and actually beefed. We are facing several fronts. There is almost a mass migration of workers from Nigeria, healthcare workers from Nigeria to the Western countries, Europe and America. There is also a very low level of funding confronting healthcare practitioners and those who are in charge of hospitals in the private sector. And what we are talking about is 85% healthcare sector, that's the private arm. So it is, yes, it's a crisis, but though I wouldn't say it has collapsed because we are still very much functional. But the problem is that this lack of funding could be set up, could be well arranged. We have been talking about 15% of the budget being dedicated to health. That should be done. And then out of that, about 75% should be dedicated to private health care because that's where the services. If the states do their 15% and federal do their 15%, and 75% of that is dedicated to private practitioners giving soft single-digit interest loan to provide amenity in the private arm. This will solve the problem. Nigerians have the best doctors, the best nurses.
Due to increased rainfall and long predicted flooding, Lagos residents have reported several inconveniences caused by heavy downpours. With lingering climate change effects, floods have already started impacting different areas of the state, leading to the loss of properties in the Lekki area. Our correspondent Adeshewa Odushoga tells us more.
In Nigeria, flooding continues to be a perennial natural hazard. Its disastrous effect on both the rich and the poor, especially those residing in riverine and coastal areas, have been demonstrated over time. Historical events in Lagos have shown a devastating aftermath of rainfall in the state, both on the island and the mainland, halting commercial activities and sometimes leading to death.
Really, it's hard on the cars, except for those that have SUVs. But if you have a salon, or you have to walk through or use it, it's hard on the cars, really. Yeah, and the water is very dirty, actually. It's
water. If you come here, if you don't inform, you go be a swimming pool. Everybody go to swim. The water, they reach me here yourself.
One of the major causes of flooding in some of these areas could be linked to indiscriminate waste disposal by residents despite a standard system provided by the state government.
At times, some residents are fond of that. When it rains, they just bring out their refuse and throw into the lagoon or into the water. And before you know it, it gathers somewhere and block the passage of water. And as a result of that, we will come and have what is called flooding at the back. Within this terrain, hardly it will be difficult for us to say we want to avert it in totality. But rather, we just need to start doing the needful.
Due to incessant occurrences and damages caused by floods, the state government has since intensified efforts to clear out canals and drainages to allow for a free flow of water off the street and homes of the victims.
We had a back-to-back like 48 hours rainfall, and we had some incidents reported around the Lekki corridor. One or two of them we handled in the rain. Then was at the Freedom Junction culvert, where the Lagos State Environmental Flood Abatement began have to move in.
It is important to note that after consistent report by News Central TV and a significant response by the local government, residents in Agungi axis of the state have reported less flooding in the area and better human and vehicular movement. In Lagos, for News Central, Adeshewa Odushoga.
In celebration of the United States' 248th Independence Day, the U.S. Consulate in Lagos hosted guests from across Nigeria at the residence of the Consul General in Lagos. Now, this celebration is an annual event which takes place a few days before the actual Independence Day, which falls on the 4th of July, giving the invited guests a feel of the actual celebration in the United States. Our correspondent Bernard Akede was there and tells us more.
Independence Day in the United States is one celebration that is taken very seriously and is largely looked forward to by Americans at home and abroad. The day is marked by various festivities including fireworks, parades, concerts, and family gatherings. For the Americans in Lagos, they were not going to miss out on this. As has been done in the past, the Consul General played host to guests at his Ikoyi residence, where they were treated to what a proper American Independence Day celebration looks like. Politicians, diplomats, businessmen and women, security personnel, celebrities, and many other guests were treated to food and drinks served in tents that represented some of the states in America, while they spoke about the kind of relationships that existed between them and the United States.
Well, for me, I'm here to celebrate today as a party because of the relationship with Nigeria, which I think we should all ensure remains cordial.
I've also worked together to make sure that the public space is safe and secured. They have been very supportive.
It's been quite a good relationship that we're very proud of, and our partners are equally very proud about it.
Some officers of the U.S. Marine performed a march past with flags, after which the national anthem of Nigeria and the U.S. were performed. Then both the Consul General and the Lagos State Governor addressed the guests and toasted to more years of independence and democracy.
This shared vision makes Nigeria and the United States natural partners, friends, and allies on so many important issues across the continent and the world. Since the beginning of this year, I think the depth and importance of that partnership has been reflected by the incredible attention that our government has paid to Nigeria.
As Nigerians, let's raise our heads up. Let's say that indeed, for every part that we have to play, let's play it with our heads up, knowing fully well that Nigeria will carry last.
As we celebrate our democracy, it's great to be in another large democracy where we share so many values. And I'm just so proud to be here in Nigeria to represent my country and to get to know all these incredible people who are here to celebrate with us and to every day interact with Nigerians, hear from them, learn from them, and make the world a better place together.
The evening ended in more celebration, but would not have been completed without the iconic Independence Day fireworks. In Lagos for News Central, I'm Bernard Akide.
Coming up, African Union observers say Mauritania presidential poll was peaceful. We have details shortly. Join us again. Thank you for staying with us. The news continues in North Africa, where the head of the African Union's election observation mission in the vast desert nation says Mauritania's presidential election took place in an overall peaceful socio-political environment without any major incident. The vast desert Northwest African nation's incumbent president, Mohamed El Ghazouani, won re-election in Saturday's poll with over 56% of the vote. He is now well placed ahead of his main rival, anti-slavery activist Biriem Den Abeid, who won just over 22%.
L'élection présidentielle du 29 juin 2024 s'est tenue dans un environnement sociopolitique global apaisé, sans incident majeur noté par la mission sur l'ensemble du territoire national. La mission a salué l'institutionnalisation de la culture du dialogue entre les parties prenantes tout au long du processus électoral. Elle a aussi noté que le système politique mauritanien évolue tout en se modernisant et en se consolidant depuis des années de façon qualitative, et ce nonobstant les controverses relatives à l'audit du fichier électoral soulevées par l'opposition.
Les opérations de dépouillement ont été réalisées de manière transparente et conformément aux procédures en présence des observateurs et des représentants des candidats. Les copies des procès-verbaux des résultats ont été remis à tous les représentants des candidats et une copie a été affichée. La remontée rapide des résultats électoraux et leur publication, ainsi que les copies des procès-verbaux sur les sites de la CENI.
In East Africa, Kenyan police fired tear gas to scatter small crowds in the capital, Nairobi, on Tuesday after youth activists called for fresh protests following deadly violence during the anti-tax hike demonstrations last month. Activists have stepped up their campaign against President William Ruto, despite his announcement last week that he would not sign into law a controversial finance bill that triggered what he has branded treasonous protests. On Tuesday morning, Nairobi's central business district, the focus of the previous rallies, saw shops closed and police sporadically firing tear gas at small crowds that had gathered. Now, elsewhere in the country, larger crowds marched in the coastal opposition stronghold of Mombasa, with smaller rallies and heavy police presence in Kisumu, Nakuru, and Nyeri. Almost 100 people were crushed to death at a Hindu religious gathering in northern India on Tuesday, with many others injured. A senior government official said a large crowd had gathered near the city of Hathras for a sermon by a preacher, but many were crushed or trampled in panic, falling on top of each other as they tried to leave. The event concluded. Chatara Divisional Commissioner for Algar in the city says 97 deaths have been confirmed so far, and officials are focusing on providing relief and medical aid for the victims. Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced compensation of $2,400 to the next of kin of those who died and $600 to those injured in the tragic incident.
खत्म होने के बाद सब लोग भाग छूटे तो माँ आगे नालों सड़क ऊंची नालों से तो गांव में गिरे एक ते ऊपर एक जो दबे गए जो खत्म हो गए फिर दो लोग वागन ने खींचे
ये हाथरस जनपद के सिकंदरा राव तहसील में ये घटना हुई है और यहाँ भी जनपद एटा में 27 डेड बॉडीज आ चुकी हैं, जिनमें 2 पुरुष हैं, बाकी सब 25 लोग महिलाएं हैं। उनके पोस्टमार्टम की प्रक्रिया शुरू हो रही है, शिनाख्त की जा रही है। जैसे शिनाख्त हो जाएगी सब पंचनामा की प्रक्रिया करते हुए पोस्टमार्टम कार्रवाई की जाएगी।
Government leaders of Poland and Germany on Tuesday held wild bilateral consultations aimed at giving a new impulse to neighborly relations that sagged under Poland's previous government. Now, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz traveled with 12 ministers and government members, including Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, for the meeting in Warsaw. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk and Scholz discussed defense cooperation as well as countering illegal immigration, which has become a problem on Poland's eastern border with Belarus.
Polska jako jedna z największych ofiar II wojny światowej, Niemcy jako sprawcy tego nieszczęścia, tej tragedii II wojny światowej, dzisiaj jako narody wolne, demokratyczne, europejskie powinny wspólnie skutecznie zadbać o to, aby Europa była bezpieczna, żeby tragedia wojny nigdy na naszych ziemiach się nie powtórzyła. I dlatego nie mam żadnych wątpliwości, a w tych czasach, w czasach wojny, agresji rosyjskiej na Ukrainę, w czasach politycznej dekompozycji właściwie nikt nie powinien mieć wątpliwości, jak ważna jest współpraca polsko-niemiecka i to w takiej przyjaznej atmosferze, przy wzajemnym zaufaniu dla polityki obu państw, ale też dla całej polityki europejskiej i dla przyszłości Ukrainy i całego regionu.
The federal government has exempted farmers, small businesses and manufacturers from withholding tax. This is according to the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, Taiwo Oyedele. He said withholding tax came into effect in Nigeria in 1977 and was meant to serve as an advance payment of tax on specified transactions. The tax expert said it was designed to provide the government with regular revenue flow and to serve as a means of curbing tax evasion. The recent executive order by the Nigerian government removing import duties, VAT and excise duties on pharmaceutical raw materials and medical equipment has been praised by the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise. Now, these fiscal measures are anticipated to enhance domestic pharmaceutical production, reduce medication costs, and improve health care access, and also stimulates job creation. However, concerns have been raised by the CPPE regarding potential revenue losses to the government if similar tax breaks are extended to other sectors. Dr. Muda Yusuf, the CEO of CPPE, discussed the impact of these measures on the cost of medications, particularly in the light of the current exchange rate challenges.
The exchange rate issue and the depreciation in the currency is one factor. That is about the exchange rate that you alluded to. The cost of imports, that is the import duty, the taxes, the cost of clearing cargo, is another major factor. So right now, those who are investors in the real sector particularly are dealing with these two major factors. They are dealing with the exchange rate depreciation, They are dealing with all these issues around the cost of bringing in the products, in terms of the import duty, in terms of the levies, and in terms of, the cost of clearing the cargo itself. So, if one component of the challenge is taken away, of course, it will have a very significant impact on cost. So what I'm saying is that if they are dealing with two problems, one around the exchange rate, which we cannot deal with immediately because these are fundamental structural issues that we need to correct or to activate or make it possible for exchange rate to appreciate, we can deal with the cost of imports. And this component.
In sports, Nigeria's table tennis player Aruna Quadri will play as one of the top seeds in the men's singles at the WTT Star Contender Bangkok 2024 in Thailand. Currently ranked as 16th by International Table Tennis Federation, Aruna could secure a spot among top 16 seeds in the men's singles at the Olympics. Notably, only 2 of the 5 top-ranked Chinese players will compete in Paris. Aruna stands out as the sole African player competing for a prize money of $250,000 against a star-studded lineup at the indoor stadium in Bangkok, with 600 ITTF world ranking points up for grabs. Now joining Aruna is Canada's Edward Leal, who has risen from the top 300 to world number 36 within the year. British tennis player Andy Murray has decided not to play in the Wimbledon singles, instead making his farewell to the All-England club in the doubles alongside older brother Jamie. Murray, who is planning to retire later this year, had surgery 10 days ago on the back issue. The 37-year-old who won Wimbledon in 2013 and 2016 was due to play Thomas Marchak of Czech Republic on center court on Tuesday. Former world number 1 Murray has a cyst close to his spinal cord removed on Saturday because it was causing nerve pain in his right leg. 185 kilometers of lanes around Paris on the ring road and motorways will be reserved for accredited vehicles to transport those involved, such as athletes, journalists, taxis, but also emergency vehicles in the Paris 2024 Olympic Games from 15th of July. In the event of a medical emergency, emergency vehicles and vehicles designed to facilitate the transport of people with reduced mobility are also authorized to use these lanes to reach you and transport them to the hospital. The roads affected by the 185-kilometer of Olympic lanes are A1 between Roissy Charles de Gaulle and Porte de la Chapelle, between Collegane and La Porte de Bercy, between Montigny-le Bretonnex. And that's all on the news. But before we go, let's take a look again at some of the major stories. House of Representatives has urged Borno suicide bombers were mercenaries. African Union observers have said Mauritania presidential poll was peaceful. Anti-government demonstrations have continued in Kenya. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen and do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Adebola Adedugba.